We are with the editor-in-chief here on Hold My Cutter, the editor-in-chief of Baseball Digest, that is, talking about Rick Cerrone, our guest, and what a career he's had. He and we, Michael McKenry and I, and Rick enjoying the Rocky Patel Edicione, the Utica, from the Honduran Jama strand with the Honduran binder and filler. A little smoked cedar, cocoa, and a slight bit of pepper taste to it. It's a really good.
I'm tasting that pepper.
Are you enjoying that?
I am. Are you kidding me?
I taste the cedar.
Yeah. Oh, you got the cedar? Okay, I got a little bit of the cocoa in there. I like it all. Rick has had a career in baseball that spans several decades. He always wanted to be, going back to his sophomore year in high school, the PR guy for the New York Yankees. That was his ultimate dream. He reached that dream, but he's done so many other things along the way. And again, currently the chief Baseball Digest editor. We picked up on our last podcast talking about your hiring by the Pirates. And the first edict from Carl Barger, who was in charge of the Pirates at the time, was basically, don't worry about the notes, don't worry about the media guys. I want you to convince the fans of Pittsburgh that these Pirates are going to stay around for another 100 years.
Wow.
You took that to task. Yeah. You had a mission. And right away, you started thinking about, now this was what year, 1987?
1987, August of 1987.
And then this is the Pirates had been through the drug trials, and they had 1 foot out the door. I mean, they were headed out of town. The Galbers put them up for sale a couple years beforehand. City kind of was saved by the likes of Carl Barger, that consortium put together, hire you as their new PR man. But right away, you have these marching orders, and you go to work on trying to get, for example, the All-Star game back to Pittsburgh, which was there in 1971.
Right.
The idea was, in your mind, if the All-Star game comes here, then people will know we're going to be here for quite some time.
If we build the Clemente statue, we're not going to truck it to Denver.
Okay.
Whatever. So that gave me a mission, and that was always in the back of my mind. When we created Pirate Fest in 19...
You created Pirate Fest too?
Well, I was part of the team that did.
That counts.
That was at the old Monroeville Mall, wasn't it, initially?
Yeah, the Expo Mart.
Expo Mart,
yeah. Bernie Mullen came in my office and put a program on my desk and said, we need to do this. And I said, Die Hard Cubs Fan Convention. And I read through it and saw what they had, seminar on this, whatever. And I said, no, we can't, we don't need to do this because we're not marketing to our diehard fans. We've already got them. We need to market to the families, the people out there that may not even come to games, but give them something that they can do on a weekend in January and fall in love with the Pirates. So
you're trying to find a different demographic?
Yeah, I basically said I want to create a theme park that's basically centered around the Pirates. Everything, if you're tossing a ball, it's the Bucko toss. If so we had.
I would go to that theme park right now.
Yeah, well, you missed it. It was a couple of weeks ago.
I was at fantasy camp, which is, in my opinion, the best thing on the planet.
Yeah, but so we had a local architects build us an indoor Forbes Field and with turf and everything, and we had our trivia contest there and our our Q&A with Jim Leyland and the GM, and it was great, and I see they're still doing it.
Yeah.
So
the Clemente statue, go back to that. Joe Vogel was a huge Pirates fan. He was out there in front of Gate A every single day, and you'd walk in to the press gate, players, front office people, and he would yell out your birthday, or don't forget it's somebody's birthday today. He knew all the dates, still does. He suffered a massive stroke many years ago and can no longer speak, but he's still at just about every single game. He was kind of the driving force. You got that Clemente statue done, but Susan Wagner. Susan Moore was the Pirate Parrot designer.
But, hey, she did more.
Yeah,
she ended up doing a lot more. With
Susan Wagner. I got confused. Again, Susan Moore was the woman that designed the Pirate Parrot costume. Susan Wagner was in charge of the Clemente statue.
Right.
So take it from there.
Well, we raised the $250,000, but as I said, I was asked to leave like a year before its completion. So I kind of got out of that. 1993. But the other thing that I'm really proud of, and there's a great story behind this, is Turn Back the Clock Day. that started, and it's a painful story to tell in a way, because it was kind of like groundbreaking. We were in Chicago, 1989 maybe, or 1990, and a bunch of players and my wife, and we went to see a movie. We went to see 8 Men Out, so 1989. So we saw the movie, and now we go to a restaurant, and we're all around a table, and players start saying, "Isn't it amazing that there was no organ to tell you when to cheer? There was no scoreboard. They just started cheering, and they this and that." And someone said, we should play a game like that. I said, before 1948, the Pirates' uniforms were actually red, white, and blue. Oh, really?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. They didn't go to black and gold till 1948, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, if we could play a game like it was 1939 and we could play the Brooklyn Dodgers and we'll have the LA Dodgers wear Brooklyn uniforms, or the San Francisco Giants wear New York Giants uniforms. So we went to Major League Baseball, and I won't say any names and everything, but the person, I said, can we do this? Can we wear red, white, and blue and ask the Dodgers or ask the Giants? And the person said, this is the single most unique idea that's ever crossed my desk. Okay. So we put it off till the next year. Between that conversation and the end of the season, I read in the USA Today that the Chicago White Sox, and we didn't have a name for the game, are going to be hosting a Turn Back the Clock Day, the first game after the All-Star game, which was played in Chicago that year at Comiskey Park. They will wear 1919 uniforms, and the person quoted from the White Sox in USA Today says, this is not something you could do at, say, Three River Stadium in Pittsburgh. So somehow our idea was leaked to him, so they actually had the first one. So we said, well, we're going to do it better. So we found out everything that they did right, everything they did wrong, and what we learned was you can't do it the way they did it, where you shut down the PA, you shut down the scoreboard, there's no sound. After 2 innings, it's boring. So we said, what if we picked a date and played the game on that date? So, and picked a year, it was 1939, as if they had the scoreboard and this stuff. What would it have done in 1939? Well, you would have put the scores up of the games that were played on that day in 1939. And I just think we draped the outfield wall with vintage billboards. It was beautiful. And I went to Carl Barger and I said, we should think about doing that. And he goes, you don't put signage on the outfield wall. This is the major leagues. This is well, now everybody does it. Yeah. We actually had an actor come in a vintage vehicle, and we announced, please welcome the President of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And he came around, and so I said, whoa, somebody said, whoa, hold on a second. How are you going to get him from the car to his box? He couldn't walk. So I think Joe Bilodeau, who's still with the Pirates, had something
love
to
Joe.
do with it. They were on the side of the car, as Secret Service, and when they got to the box, they carried him to the box.
Oh my gosh.
And this guy who was he actually was an actor who portrayed Franklin Roosevelt. So, but here's the best part of the day.
But that's an experience, right?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So here's the best part of the day. The Pirates take the field in their red, white, and blue uniforms, and they retire. We played. The Dodgers would not participate. They said there was some trademark problem that they couldn't wear Brooklyn. Well, I don't know what it was, but it was 30-something years ago. But the Giants agreed, and they played in their blue and orange New York Giants uniforms. And I still have the pictures of all the Pirates players in their uniforms.
I may look up and get those uniforms. I collect uniforms.
So,
cool.
Yeah, you can get them from Mitchell and Ness, which is who did it for us. So we take the field and we retire the Giants in the top of the first. And unbeknownst to me, before the players take a step to go off the field, they throw their gloves on the field, which is what you did in 1939. You left your glove at your position.
Team,
Come on.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And they all did it. And I was like, and you know whose idea it was? Barry Bonds.
Wow. Was he a baseball
I don't know, but he said to the guys, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this right. right? We have to flip our gloves if we want to be accurate. And somebody in the dugout said, Barry, if we want to be accurate, you're not playing.
Well, wait, but they did that just for show for a half an inning. No,
Yeah, they just did it once.
Yeah, once.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
And then they went out and reached. They didn't leave the gloves out there.
You know, about 10 years ago, they had one at PNC Park.
Uh-huh.
You were aware of that?
I knew they had
And
one.
they had Tim Tobacco, the public address announcer, on the dugout with a megaphone.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
We had Art. I think we still had Art McKinnon do that. Apologies to Tim if it was Tim and not Art.
He wasn't on the dugout, Art McKenna.
No.
That's so cool. I love
We
stuff
actually
like
carried
this.
Art.
I was going to say, like Franklin Delano
Yeah,
Roosevelt.
he could have played Franklin Roosevelt.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's right.
No, it was a great day. We all went to thrift shops and got vintage clothing with fedoras, and it was.
So everybody bought it.
Yeah.
Everybody bought it. All the Pirate front, and it was great. It was.
Hey, speaking of Bonds,
Yeah.
you got to take us through the episode that, I don't know if it put Leyland on the map, but everybody refers back to that moment down in Bradenton.
And too, Bonds, as a kid, I loved Bonds.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, but I was a youngster. One of my first little league teams was the Giants. I had a little blood stain on the cap from getting hit in the face and finishing the game, and I still have that cap. I idolized this man. Knew nothing about him except how good he was. And
Yeah,
I
that's
love
all you
watching
should have
play.
known, too.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear more about
Talking
Bonds
about
and
the
this story.
screaming match in spring
Well,
training
it's
between
well
Leyland.
documented now, and Jim will tell you that he's not.
He downplays it
He
now,
downplays it now.
That was a big deal when it happened.
And what year was this?
This was 1991, and Bonds was the MVP from 1990, and he and his good friend Bobby Bonilla had, before spring training of 91, both lost their arbitration cases. And Bobby, more so than Barry, was very, very upset, and I think a lot of it was fueled by his agent. They may have had the same agent, as I remember. And they basically agreed with each other that they were going to, quote, freeze out the ball club, and they were going to do nothing that the ball club asked them to do, other than, after the game, talk to the writers, whatever.
And was it common then for arbitration? Like, a lot of contracts don't even come close anymore. You may hear about 5,
No,
6, 7.
It was a big deal back then, but so we went to spring training, and it happened to be photo day. And photo day is when all the media, the Post Gazette, the Tribune Review, whoever, but Topps, Fleer, Donruss, whoever else, the national agencies set up stations and take pictures. Well, they boycotted that. Well, I found that kind of odd since they're paying you for these photos. But anyway, they didn't participate. So photo day ends and the players go out, and the cameras were all set up to film the workout, and they were a good distance away, and Barry just objected to them, not how close they were, which is what people are talk about, but that they were taking his picture at all.
I'm
He
sorry
got
to
so
interrupt here,
upset
but
about it.
I thought Jim Lachima, who was your assistant, I thought he had told me once that the odd thing was that was either a friend or someone that Barry had hired.
Yeah, well, I don't recall this as maybe I should, but apparently we had credentialed for that day Barry's own photographer.
Okay, yeah, that's what he said.
But Barry kept, get back, stop taking my picture, and then finally Jim Lachima, who was under me as the media relations director, went over to Barry, and Barry just undressed him. That, I decide who takes my picture, and he goes, no, you don't. And I think one of the coaches, Leyland didn't witness any of this, but one of the coaches went and got him on another field because he sensed that something bad was going to happen. And Barry continued to sulk, and Bill Verdon was an outfield instructor, a legendary Pirate. And, as Rich Donnelly says in an article that'll run in our March-April issue about Jim Leyland, he says, you don't mess with Bill Verdon. That was, and I think Leyland's kind of circling this group of outfielders, and he just feels that Barry's being belligerent or whatever.
Disrespectful to Bill.
Disrespectful, and he just unloaded on him. You don't want to be. Everybody knows.
Leyland marched over when he said that was enough. He saw.
Yeah, and he
had reached his
unloaded
tipping
on him, and he said, why? And he said, because I'm the bleeping manager. That's why, blah, 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 blah. He goes, so it was, and I write this in my column in the March-April issue and Ron Cook wrote it back in November when Jim was a candidate for the Hall of Fame, that's the moment that launched his trajectory to the Hall of Fame. And my take is that could have gone the other way, because if he lets that go and doesn't do what he did, I think he would have lost a lot of he gained there was nobody in the game that didn't,
he gained the respect of everyone, including Bonds.
Exactly.
He didn't back down to Goliath.
Right. And he said, he made it clear, I'm the manager. I'm in charge. This and that. I can't have that. Whatever. And after that, Bonds was. But I will tell you one thing that was interesting, that year, I think, because Bonilla only played one more year, so it was prior to 92, they offered Barry a contract that would have made him the second highest contract in Major League Baseball. The only player in Major League Baseball that would have been earning more than Barry Bonds was Roger Clemens. And I believe this contract was for 4 years, $16 million, which at the time was significant. And Bonilla completely rejected it. And Bonds came to me and said, go tell Mr. Barger, offer me that contract and I'll sign it. And I got to be honest with you, can you imagine 10 years later if we lose Barry Bonds and Carl Barger were to say to me, is it true that Bonds told you he would have signed that contract? You didn't tell. I have to tell you. So I went to Carl Barger and I said, hey, Barry said, give him that contract and he'll sign it tomorrow. And Carl basically, I love Carl, but he said, are you out of your mind? We're not, So
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think a lot of the reason they didn't go, I don't think they really wanted Barry.
Well,
I really don't. I mean, he just.
I don't know how you could.
I know.
Not how you could draw that conclusion, but how one could draw, why they would think that.
Yeah, but go a little bit deeper, both of you, in the sense of why. Like, I've spoken to some of his teammates, and he was a decisive.
He was a bad guy, man.
Okay.
He was a bad person.
I've heard both.
No, that's not true.
Well, the way he treated people.
Yeah.
And I'm using past tense because Barry. We had Barry in the booth a couple of years ago with the Giants. He was very cordial, and some of his teammates, I've talked to them. They liked him and stuff like. But in terms of how he treated others, it was not good.
This is what I thought. With all the players I dealt with, from starting with the Pirates to the Yankees, everybody's different. If I had 25 dentists, there's going to be the really good people, the spoiled people, almost the same as baseball.
Everybody has a reality.
Right. But the only thing is, I did not grow up in Barry Bonds' shoes. I did not have his upbringing.
I'm not trying to.
Right. But I kind of I almost felt bad for Barry.
Well, that's all well and good. But the bottom line was how he treated others had an impact.
Right.
There's no doubt in my mind, if Carl Barger were alive today, he was sitting here and he would love to be here with us with a cigar, and we got him now, and we said he would say it wasn't worth it to us. It was a PR nightmare.
Right.
For the
Hindsight
Pittsburgh
2020, though.
Looking back,
Yeah, but I'm just saying, hindsight 2020. When did the losing streak start?
Yeah, but
93.
But let me tell you another thing. I was the PR guy. When you say PR nightmare, I was the head of PR. I never considered him a nightmare. He was challenging. He was a challenge. But you know what? You looked the other way for talent like that. Not every great player was Ernie Banks.
Well, I understand that, but let's take a look at the history of the Pirates over the years. When you call it what you will, but how that person is perceived by a fan base had an impact, and maybe still does, and maybe it should. Where you can't separate the personality with the great player.
Right.
Dave Parker comes to mind.
Right.
They wanted Parker out of here. Now, of course, they have since made up in a great way. But
and the same with Bonds.
Same with Parker was a great player, but the Pirates could not afford in their minds to keep that lightning rod in this city.
Well, I will tell you, though, that as the guy who was the head of PR, I never felt for 1 minute, as difficult as he may have made my job, right? And he made it more difficult than other people. I never felt that we're selling less tickets. And people, because
well, this goes back to the thing we've debated.
Right.
And
I'm not sure they care.
And that's what Jim Leyland has always said. Give me 25 jerks that can play.
Well,
Well, but it's because he could manage that.
Right.
Yeah.
Some guys can't. I mean, he's got a knack, and he's special in the sense of the way he deals with human
you get
beings.
a bunch of great players to worry about. Because I can teach them PR in the winter, as he used to say.
let me tell you, or Serone can teach him PR.
It's easy to tame. I've heard the theory. It's easy to tame a bull. It's hard to build a bull.
Right, there you go. Well, let me tell you Jim Leyland's story. So I'm at the commissioner's office with Peter Uberoth, right? And I didn't tell this story yet.
This is what year?
1986.
Right? No, you have not.
All right, well, I'm working for Peter Uberoth, and he had sent me down to Pittsburgh when Mr. Galbraith was announcing the sale of the team. And I said, what do you want me to do there? He goes, make sure that he doesn't say anything stupid. I'm like,
Peter Uberoth said that?
That's a broad statement.
What am I going to do? Whoa, that's really stupid.
Yeah, so let's bleep that out.
Stop. Yeah.
Even
a little late now.
Anyway, I go to the press conference. I meet, Greg Johnson, who I knew. That's when
Legend.
Well, so I'm actually sitting in the office that would eventually, a year later, be my office. But everything went fine. I went back. So now it's opening day for this new ownership group. Opening day, April 4th, whatever the day was, 1986. They're playing the Mets. Big crowd, 50,000. And Peter says, hey, I don't know if this was the day before or the day. He goes, listen, Ginny and I, his wife Ginny, we're going to fly down to Pittsburgh for the game. Do you want to come along? I'm like, sure. So Nancy Rich, who had Pittsburgh roots, she went down with us in a private plane. The four of us, we get there, we get a car to the ball. So now we get there maybe 90 minutes before the game. We go in the front office and we're greeted by Mac Prine, the new president, first time I met him. We're standing outside of what was Mac's office. This is 90 minutes before the game. And at the end of the hall that I would learn was a door that if you went through that door and another 50 feet, you're at the clubhouse. So if you were going to the front office from the clubhouse, that's the door. So we're talking, and all of a sudden, the door opens, and this guy walks through the door, and it hits you because he's wearing a spanking white home pirate uniform. And as he approaches, I learned this is Jim Leyland, the manager. And he's looking for Mac Prine. And Mac says, oh, Jim, this is our manager, Jim Leyland. Jim, say hello to the commissioner, Peter Uberoth, and his wife, Ginny. And Leyland says, yeah, nice to meet you. Hey, Mac. I mean, he wasn't disrespectful, but Mac, we got a problem. And he's got the Mets lineup card, and it was 38 years ago, so forgive me that I don't remember the exact details.
You're okay.
It had something to do with them not being at 25 men, that there were 26 names on this roster. And I remember the name Doug Sisk, the relief pitcher, so he must have been the guy that ultimately got, but they should have presented a lineup card with 25 guys, and he was going in an animated way with Mac, and Mac's looking at him like, what is it I'm going to do?
Yeah.
Did he want him to call the league president? So anyway, finally, Jim says his piece and walks away, and Peter Uberoth taps Mac on the shoulder and says, your new man there has quite a fire. I like that. You got a good one there, I think. And 38 years later, he's going to the Hall of Fame. So that was my first meeting.
How about he goes into the front office?
That was your first meeting with?
I never met Leyland before.
That's great.
It was prior to your hiring.
I wonder, and I'm going to ask him when I see him. I mean, do you remember that at all? That he might say, I have no idea what you're talking about.
I mean, you got to remember walking into the front office,
I don't
full
know.
uniform right for the game. That's outstanding.
I don't know, but
so that was common.
What I was seeking out, what was, I just said, what's the president?
I don't know what he wanted him to do, but you got to call a league. I don't know, but all I know is that was my meeting with Jim Leyland, who within a year I would be working with as his PR guy.
All the managers you've legendary, of course, the Hall of Famers.
Well, they're all in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, well, it just so happens Joe Torre and Jim Leyland. How do you compare those two? Leland and Torre.
Well, they were two very, very different people because, Jim was a guy that you could believe was once a mail carrier, which he was, or a construction worker.
Yeah.
That was not Joe.
So Joe, perfect for the city.
Joe was very laid back, But so when I got the Yankee job in '96, my first worry was, other than a lot different than 1972 when I wanted it. Now George Steinbrenner owns the Yankees, and he fires people, like George Costanza says, like it's a bodily function, and mostly his PR guys.
Yes.
So he had owned the team for
because PR is different there.
He had owned the team for 24 years at that point, or thereabouts, and he had gone through 12 PR guys before me. The longest-serving PR director under Steinbrenner, Mr. Steinbrenner, before me, was a guy named Harvey Green.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Who went on to be with the Dolphins.
Yeah.
And he was there for like 2.5 seasons, and he was known as the Lou Gehrig of Yankee PR.
Because he lasted that long.
Yeah, so
who are you, the Babe Ruth?
That was my first worry. But my bigger concern was Joe got the job in November, and the PR man was a young man named Rob Butcher. Now, Rob Butcher left the Yankees on Christmas because he made the mistake of going home for Christmas Eve, and then they were going to announce that they signed David Cohn, and he said, well, I'll fly back, and they said, Mr. Steinbrenner says, don't bother. That's when I got the call.
Merry Christmas.
And, well, the funny thing is, we were living in Pittsburgh, and my brother-in-law, Scott, came down for Christmas, and he walks in my house and he throws the New York Post or the Daily News on the table, and on the back cover is a caricature of Steinbrenner, and it says Scrooge, talking about how he fired the PR guy. So my brother-in-law Scott's first words were, your job's available.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm not touching that. The kid will have his job back in a week. And then I start getting calls from writers, Bill Madden, Jack O'Connell, your job. Finally, they call me and say,
I love that they're saying your job.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
They knew how much you wanted it.
Finally, they call me and say, look, they offered the kid his job back. He didn't take it. They're doing a search. Your name's come up. So if you want the job, you got to call Arthur Richmond, who I knew for many years. He was a senior advisor to Mr. Steinbrenner. And I talked to Karen, and in spite of what she thought, I called Arthur Richmond. And I remember given my whole story. I've wanted this job my whole life since I was 15. I'm the man for the job. And I'm thinking, and I'll never forget his response. I'll leave out the expletive. He said to me, are you out of your mind?
Really?
I said, what do you mean? He goes, you can't work with this man. He's crazy. Blah, blah, blah. I said, well, you work with him. That's different. I don't take any crap from him. I said, well, you'll teach me. You'll be my mentor. All right, I'll call you back. So out of that, I got the interview. I went up. I got the job. My biggest concern was, I don't know what kind of relationship Joe forged with Rob Butcher.
Yeah.
He might be ticked off, and he's going to be difficult for the next guy to replace Rob. But I got the job on a Friday, and they said, hey, can you get a tuxedo? Remember, I drove to New York for the interview. I got my 2-year-old son with me. We're staying at my parents. And when they gave me the job, they said, can you get a tux by Sunday? Because we want to introduce you as the new PR director at the black tie baseball writers dinner. So I'm at the baseball writers dinner with the tux that my good friends at Marty's Formal wear, where I got my high school prom tux many years earlier.
How cool.
Fixed me up, and I'm in the dais room. Not that I was on the dais, but I'm in the dais room with Arthur, and here comes Joe Torre. Hey, Joe, say hello to our new PR man, Rick Cerrone. Well, Joe couldn't have been nicer, and Rick, like he knew me his whole life. I probably met him 3 times. And I'll never forget what he said. He goes, we're going to have some fun. And I'm like, fun? Nobody mentioned fun.
Fun.
And I got to tell you something about Joe Torre. We had some fun, and I don't mean in a bad. I mean the dinners, the lunches, the shopping.
He embraced it.
You want to have dinner tonight with Bob Gibson? You want to have dinner with Stan Musial? It just, Kirk Douglas? Have you met Gregory Peck? I mean, it was like.
So your childhood dream was even better than you thought.
Oh my God. It was, and listen, I had to manage the boss, and people ask me to this day, what was it like working for Steinbrenner? I'm like, maybe you should ask him what it was like working with me.
Yeah.
I had to be honest with you.
You did something. Well, what do you think the reason was that you did become the Lou Gehrig
because
of the Yankees
I think
PR?
I thought he was Babe Ruth.
Well, I'm talking about oops.
You're good. Nope, you're good.
Just the fact that he's the longest tenured. Yeah, I mean, you could say the Babe Ruth and the Lou Gehrig.
Yeah, wrapped in what?
I'll settle for the Garrick, but I think the reason was Joe Torre said many times, and he wrote this in a book, that he had been fired so a number of times that at some point you just got to say, it doesn't matter. You can only do what you can do. Wasn't going to take, and I also thought many times he could be a bully. And the way you fight off a bully is to go right back at him.
You stand tall.
And he will tell you, and I had a very special relationship with him. I remember Hal, his son, said to me, I don't know what you two guys got going, but look, let me say this about Mr. Steinbrenner. Yes, he was a flawed man, but he was a great leader, and there were 3 to 4 to 5 times where I had no business having a job the next day. Because he could have said, well, in hindsight, you were right, but you can't talk to me like that. Oh. He never he would apologize to me. I could tell you stories of things that happened that you can't make this stuff up. But there was one time in 2003 where I resigned 3 times in a span of 5 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
Over various things.
Come on.
One time, he wanted to do something that there's no way you could do this. The commissioner would never allow you to do it. He says, well, we're doing it. And I said, this was on the phone. And I said, well, if you're going to do this, sir, I think you're going to have to find yourself a new media relations director. And his comment over the phone was, yeah, you're probably right. And he hung up. And I'm like, did I just quit? Did I just get fired? So I went home. This was at the end of the day. And I told my wife, Karen, what had happened. And I said, I don't know what to do. Do I go to work? She goes, remember on Seinfeld when George Costanza told off his boss and Jerry convinced him just go back to work the next day like nothing happened? I said, yeah, how did that work out for George Costanza? He got berated and tossed out of the building. So, and then he ended up trying to poison the guy. So she goes, well, that's my counsel. So I go to work the next day. Now, the next day was the press conference to introduce Jose Contreras. And the whole day goes by, I'm working on the press conference, and finally at 4:30, 5 o'clock, Mr. Steinbrenner's online too. I always answer the phone, and I'll explain why in a minute. Yes, sir. Yeah, now are you all set for tomorrow? Blah, blah, blah. You're going to focus on Hal. He'll represent the Steinbrenner. Okay, good enough. I said, whoa. You and I had words.
You said that?
Yeah. And he goes, oh, yeah, I thought about that. He goes, you're right. We're not going to do that.
No way.
Yeah, so,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, so good counsel from Karen.
They're usually right.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give you the secret to my success, if you want to call it that. So it's 1977. The Yankees are now the world champions. I feel bad. I wish I was their PR director, but I'm covering them for Baseball Quarterly. I was there when Reggie hit the 3 home runs. And I requested an interview for Baseball Quarterly for the Q&A, which we had back then, with George Steinbrenner. And I got the interview in some afternoon in November. So I'm sitting in his office, and I have pictures of this. I had a photographer with me. And I asked him a question about his leadership style. Do you manage different people differently? Do you blah, 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 blah? And he said, in the interview, he said, Rick, there are 2 kinds of leaders. Some are Eisenhowers and some are Pattons, referring to the 2 very different World War II generals. And then he said, I guess I'm a Patton. And when I was walking to my car that afternoon, I can still picture the scene, dusk, Yankee Stadium, cold November night. I said, that's the ticket. If I ever get this job, he's General Patton, and I am a lowly corporal. And from that moment on, when I got the job, I answered the phone, yes, sir. Sir, if I could ask this, sir, what do you know? It was always sir. Then it got to be, sir, I can't let you do that. Like that one time,
yeah.
Sir, over my dead body. Sir, are you out of your mind? But it was always sir. And that really served me well, because I felt like it was the military, and he
deserved the respect he felt. And didn't you also tell me, Rick, that he would constantly do things behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah.
That was never got any publicity.
Well, he told me many, many times that if you do something for someone and more than two people know about it, you did it for the wrong reason. Which, you know, the Yankees did a lot of things for a lot of people, but it never got out. Now, with him gone, they'll promote everything they do for, it's, the media drives a lot of it, but my hands were tied. You had to do things,
So you could have done a lot for his reputation.
But for example, give us an example of something he would do.
Oh my God! He'd say, "Hey, by the way, this father and son, they're going to fly with you for Cleveland. I met them; they're big fans. They're going to Cleveland with you. Well, make them the bat boy or something." And I'll tell you, the best thing that happened.
Just random people he met.
For some reason, he met these two people, and he liked the kid or something. And I remember one time we're doing that, we're flying there, and David Cohn, I think it was, is walking up and down because the players would get their meal money on the plane, an envelope, depending on how many days you were going. So let's say you get an envelope with $680.25. And the traveling secretary once told me, you have no idea when I walked the plane how many quarters I would find on the seats. But anyway, David Cohn went up and down the aisles and to every guy on the plane, $20, $20. And he gave the kid an envelope, said, here's your meal money.
I missed that side of baseball.
$400. But, so he did just so many things for people that he didn't want anybody to know about. And I'm going to tell you a good story. So it's 1999, and I felt very good. Like, he thinks something of you. He called me up to his office end of the day, and he said, I went to Miami today, and I visited Joe D.
Jeez.
Joe DiMaggio, and he's not here. It won't be long. He goes, he had a trachea or a thing in his throat, but he had a tie on to see me, but he's not long. So we need to be prepared. So I said, okay, I want this, I want that. So one morning at 7:30, he had a PR man named Howard Rubenstein who did like outside of baseball PR. And Howard says, Joe DiMaggio died. Mr. Steinbrenner wants to see you in his office at 8:30. I go up to his office at 8:30. He goes, yeah, now we got to do this right. You're the man in charge. I want black armbands. I want a moment of silence. I want a video. Okay. I said to him, Mr. Steinbrenner,
sir,
we had a thing out in front of Legends Field, now Steinbrenner Field, called Monument Park, where they had the retired uniform numbers and a little bio. I said, people are starting to leave flowers and visit. This is 8:30 in the morning. I said, I think there needs to be flowers out there from the Yankees. I'll call a florist, and they might not be here for an hour or two, but okay. With that, his secretary walks in. She goes, I didn't mean to overhear, but if you're looking for flowers and you want them quickly, the woman who does the flowers for the suites is here. So send her up. So she comes up, and I say, this is what I want. I measured it. I'm 28 inches high, this wide. Okay, so she leaves. I'm in my office, and like 30 minutes later, the front desk calls me. And I said, yeah, hello. And she said, yeah, the woman is here with the flowers. Wow, that was fast.
Wow, yeah.
I go down there, and she's holding this little cup of flowers like you'd buy in a hotel gift shop.
Oh, my gosh.
And she goes, before you say anything, these are not the flowers. They'll be here in an hour. But I went from suite to suite, and I put this together. Do you want to put this out there in the meantime? And I said, no. We can't have that represent the Yankees. People will get the wrong idea. Okay, with that, the elevator door opens, and who walks out? Mr. Steinbrenner. Are you kidding me?
Oh.
This is your idea of flowers? I'll never forget these words. Serone, you're off the flower detail. And I'm laughing hysterically. I get on the elevator, and the woman is like, oh. So I get in my office, and the front desk. Hello. I'm sorry. But I explained to him what I wanted to do, and he understands. He knows this. So I said, I'm back on the flower detail. Well, the flowers will be. So the flowers went out there. So we do the thing, the moment of silence, the black armbands, the video, the whole 9 yards. And I get a call, and the man that ran his suite, Dick Kraft, says, Mr. Steinbrenner wants to see you in his suite. Okie doke. I walk in the suite. He's talking to people on the other side of the room, and when he sees me walk in, he just walks away from them. Doesn't say, I'm like, oh, God. He comes over and he puts out his hand. He goes, I'm really embarrassed by the way I treated you today. You don't deserve that. You did a great job for me.
Wow.
I'm so happy you're on my team. And I'm like, okay.
Was that few? That probably didn't happen much.
No,
Did it?
with that, his son Hal, who's sitting there, literally spits out his coke. So I go back to my office, the phone rings again. GMS suite. Hello, and it's Hal. And he says, I have known that crazy lunatic my whole life. I have never seen that in my life.
Wow.
Anyway.
I got to ask you about my favorite George Costanza. You're like George. You are George Costanza. Did they call you George Costanza?
No.
By the
Well, they call the assistant to the traveling secretary.
but some of your stories are absolutely priceless. But how about the one?
Cod uniform?
Are you aware of the movie The Pride of the Yankees? It's a 1942 movie about Lou Gehrig. It's black and white. It stars Gary Cooper as Lou Gehrig. Babe Ruth is in it. The woman that plays Lou Gehrig's wife's name is Eleanor Wright.
Teresa Wright.
Teresa Wright. I'm sorry, Teresa Wright. She plays Eleanor Gehrig. She's Teresa Wright in this classic baseball movie about Lou Gehrig and getting ALS. An amazing story for me, Rick.
Well, it's probably, I don't want to say my greatest accomplishment. It's my greatest memory, my greatest moment. Like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
So 1 year, and I've loved Teresa Wright, who was 24 years old when she made that movie, maybe younger. And beautiful woman, made other movies, Best Years of Our Lives. So I'm watching the Academy Awards in 1998, so March of 1998, from my little apartment in Tampa in spring training. And that year happened to be the 75th anniversary, or the 70th, of the Academy Awards. So for that show, the producers brought back every living actor and actress that had won an award. And at some point in the show, they unveiled, it looked like bleachers, and they were sitting 4 rows of these legendary actresses, Lauren Bacall and Cher and all these, Denzel Washington, and they introduced them from top row, left to right, and they're going, and the last person they introduced, there is Teresa Wright, who I hadn't seen in many years. And, this little woman, I'm like, wow, Teresa Wright, she played Eleanor Gehrig. We should have her throw out a first pitch. I don't know what made me think that, but I did. So
happenstance.
I don't remember the order of this, but I ran it by Mr. Steinbrenner, and he went on one of those Seinfeldian Steinbrenner riffs, like, oh yes, great movie, love the movie. But yes, go. He was all for it. All right. So I had friends at the Letterman show, and I called one of them, Jill Lederman, and I said, how do you track down an actress? She goes, well, you just look it up in the agency. So she gives me the name of her agent, a man by the name of Francis Del Duca. Phone number. I call Francis Del Duca, and I get him on the phone. And I tell him, the Yankees like to honor Teresa Wright, who played Eleanor Gehrig, by having her throw out a ceremonial first pitch. Oh, I found out she lives in Norwalk, Connecticut, which is an hour. So it's not like we're flying her in from Phoenix and she doesn't fly. We'll send a car. So Francis Del Duca's reaction was, that's very nice of you, but I doubt she'll do it. I'm like, why not? She goes, Rick, the woman is nearly 80 years old. I said, well, she doesn't have to strike anybody out. She could hand the ball to the catcher. We just want to, I will reach out to Teresa and I will get back. But, don't get your hopes up. So I'm basically, so the next day, my secretary says, do you want to speak to a Teresa Wright?
She just called you personally.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Hello. And there was that voice of 24-year-old Teresa. I'm so excited. Oh, this is the nicest thing anyone's ever done. Blah, blah. So we picked the date, July 4th, the such and such anniversary, 50 of the famous speech, and she comes to the game with her grandson, Noah. I meet them at the car, and this little woman in a denim dress gets out. We go up to have lunch first. I give her a Yankee hat. She puts it on, and she says to me, "This is so exciting. I've never been to a baseball game."
The woman that played Lou Gehrig's
I said,
wife.
"Wait, excuse me. You've never been to a baseball game. You were Eleanor Gehrig. You played opposite Babe Ruth." She goes, "Rick, that was just a role. One of probably 2 or 3 I did that year. When it was over, I was just on to the next production.
Role, yes.
And I've never been much of a fan." Okay, so this woman is not a fan. So we take her into the dugout, and she can't believe that all the Yankees are clamoring to. I give these guys credit because whether they knew her or knew of her, they made her feel like a queen. And then she goes.
By the way, but before the first pitch, there was a clip of the.
We show a clip of her dancing with Gary Cooper
in the movie.
The place starts applauding right away. She goes out. She throws the ball.
What was the reaction of the crowd?
Tremendous ovation.
How'd she throw it? I bet she.
No, she did good. She did good.
I bet she did.
She practiced with her grandson, and then Tino Martinez brought her out a dozen roses. She went. She watched the rest of the game in the suite, and I'm thinking, you did good. This was great. The end of the story. Well, now a month later. Well, 2 months later, it's now the end of September. We're in the playoffs, and my secretary says there's a man on the phone. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. His name was Dan. He would like to speak to you. He's Teresa Wright's son-in-law. Oh God, I hope nothing's happened. And he gets on the phone. I said, "Yes, sir." And he says, "Mrs. Serone, I have a problem with my mother-in-law, and it's your fault." I said, "Well, what is it?" She goes, "Whenever we want to take her out to dinner, she can't go because the Yankees are on. This woman goes to sleep at night with a transistor radio to listen to the game. You've created a monster." And he's laughing. He says, "No, seriously, she really would love to come to a playoff game. Is there any chance that she can get tickets to?" Well, Mr. Steinbrenner says, "Yes, she'll be in my suite." So she comes to the game. She's in the suite, and Keith Olbermann's doing like sideline reporting, and he says, "You got anybody interested?" I said, "I got Teresa Wright." And Keith Olbermann, who's as much of a historian as he goes, "Teresa Wright." So we set up a place where he can interview her, and they put it on during the game. And I don't, in memory, she's talking about her love of the game, whether you're 8 or you're 80. I love it. I love the theater of it. And it was so poignant that baseball put it in a press release and put it out.
Wow.
So from that moment on, this woman who knew nothing about baseball, "Rick, Teresa Wright's on the phone. Rick, it's Teresa. Hi, Teresa. Rick, I'm a little worried about David. His arm, he didn't seem himself last night. Rick, I fear that Joe's overusing the bullpen." I'm like, what the?
You created a GM.
This is unbelievable. So then, 2 years later, in 2000, Derek Jeter wins the Toast of the Town Award, the Joe DiMaggio Toast of the Town Award from the baseball writers. So I don't know whose idea this was, but they want Teresa Wright to present Jeter with the Joe DiMaggio Toast at the baseball writers, and she agrees to come. She's all dressed up. We get her, so she's sitting up there on the dais next to Jeter and everything. Gets a wonderful ovation. The next morning, her picture is on the front page of the New York Times sitting next to Jeter. And she calls me up and she says, "I got to tell you, having my picture on the front page of the New York Times with Derek Jeter means more to me than winning the Oscar."
Wow.
So it is like, so the woman who played the first lady of the Yankees in a movie, because Eleanor Gehrig was known as the first lady of the Yankees, actually became the first lady of the Yankees. And she was a Yankee fan till the day she died. And when she died, her mother-in-law, her daughter, Mary Kelly Bush, called me up and she said, I just want to tell you what you meant to my mother.
Unbelievable.
She said, she goes, you don't have any way of knowing this, but when you called her, she had just made a decision that I've made my last movie. And she made her last movie that year, The Rainmaker.
What was
The
it?
Rainmaker. with
Oh,
Matt
wow. She
Damon.
was in The Rainmaker.
Yeah. She was,
Gosh.
Matt Damon, I think, lived in her house or something.
Holy cow.
Okay, but she made it, I can't do this anymore. I can't remember my lines. I can't travel. And she wondered, what am I going to do with the rest of her life? And you gave her purpose. What she was going to do for the rest of her life was be a Yankee. And I'm very proud of that.
You breathe so much life into her. That's so cool.
Baseball, that's such a tremendous
I think only
baseball story.
can do that.
That's what I was
It's
going to
'cause
say.
it's romantic,
It's only
right?
baseball that can
Right.
do this.
Yeah.
And you've experienced fan bases all over the country
Right.
through all the work that you've done. Go back to your Pirate days when you worked for the Pirates, but also stepping away and going to New York. How is the fan base perceived in Pittsburgh, Pirates
It's
baseball?
not, one of the things that bothers me more than anything is the perception nationally of the Pirate fan base. I'm so tired of hearing that, oh, it's a football town.
Right.
Oh, they don't have good fans. Well, first of all, when you give them a good product, they're tremendous fans.
My answer is, by the way, it's a winner's town.
It's a winner's town.
No disrespect.
But-
Hey,
It's
look
a
at my
win-
hat.
It's a
City of
winner's town.
Champions.
Yeah,
There you
it's
go.
a winner's town.
But-
It's like any town in the
Yeah.
country. It's a winner's town.
Yeah, and I was, when I got the Yankee job in '96, we barely drew 2 million people. We had trouble selling postseason tickets. If you look at games from back then,
That's hard to
the
believe.
right field stands are empty. So people want a winner. And I think if this town, if the Pirates could have sustained the early great start they got off to last year, I think the attendance was
Oh, yeah. You could
respectable.
feel it again.
But if they ever were in a pennant race, I think that place would be packed. The other thing is they have the best ballpark in the country, in my opinion. There are other great parks. It's my favorite. It's the right size for the market. What people don't understand is this is a small town.
Yeah.
You want to, the Yankees, they do 3 million. Well, you got 15 million people living in the New York metropolitan area. How great, we don't have that kind of population. But I just hope, again, that the Pirates can now sustain something for a little bit. I like what they're doing. My big criticism of ownership 5 years ago was, if you're going to rebuild, spend a couple bucks and get some reputable major league players on the roster along with these rookies, which they have now done.
Mm-hmm.
They've now done. They brought back McCutcheon. They got Chapman. They got Rowdy Tellez. They're doing those things. So I'm optimistic, and I just want to see this great franchise, as Carl Barger would say, in this great city of Pittsburgh, thrive for another 100.
No, you will. Now you're back, so you get a chance to see it firsthand. What a treat, isn't it?
It is, and you are back in Pittsburgh. Why? Right? You're from New York. You love New York. You spent most of your working life there, and then you move back to Pittsburgh. And I just moved here, so
Those
I
6
get
years.
it.
Those 6 years that my wife and my son was born here in 1993, were very happy years, and we loved everything about Pittsburgh, the quality of life, what you get for your money. Not in everything. There's some things here that you pay more for than in New York, which kind of surprised me. But
that sandwich up by your house is expensive, isn't it?
no, not that. But gas isn't any cheaper because of taxes and whatnot. But I won't mention any stores by name, but they're not any cheaper. But we had a lot of friends here. That's the great thing. I can name you 30 people that are still friends from the Pittsburgh area from when we were here.
Yeah.
And I don't have that connection with the Yankees. I didn't make lifetime friendships. I mean, I made lifetime friendships I still get Christmas cards from Pirates players.
Yeah.
That's
The
amazing.
Fishers, the Gotts, the Robinsons, the Kippers, It's just the Breams. You're still like when you see them, it's like you reconnect. The Draybecks and all of those people that I mentioned will tell you. You can, whatever I did after Pittsburgh, I could never replicate what we had in Pittsburgh, and you know that. I mean, look at the cruise we went on with.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't happen today.
Right.
I mean, when the Pirates won the NL East in 1990, right? We were in St. Louis, and we clinched in St. Louis. We get on the plane. We think we're going to deplane, go back to the ballpark. We deplaned, and the airport was utter chaos. Thousands of people. They had to make room for us to walk single file to the buses. They're shaking. And then we go to the Clark Bar across from Three Rivers Stadium, and all the players are there. And Wally Backman's on the bar spraying Does that happen in New York? Are players going to the local bar near Yankee Stadium and celebrating with the fans? No. Pittsburgh is a very, very special place.
Yeah.
Amen.
The sandwich I was talking about, by the way, by your house, you told me I got to stop by.
Oh, the Greg Brown.
Yeah.
The Greg Brown. Whoa.
Yeah,
The
but
Greg Brown.
Can I give them a shout out?
Sure.
Yeah, and tell me what the Greg Brown is.
But no, but we got to get the Fort sandwich. They've got a bunch of sandwiches named after.
They have the Stan Savarin, they have the Myron Cope, they have the Greg Brown.
Isn't that
I got to go up there and eat some of these sandwiches.
So I told Greg's got to go in there with me and sit and order the meat.
Soon the Fort 55 will be on the menu.
I like it.
This is Bowser's Barbecue in Monaca.
Yeah.
Terrific place.
Barbecue place. So, Tennessee guy, we've been looking for a great barbecue place. I'm in. I'm all in.
Bowser's. All right,
Bowser's.
Bowser's.
I'm coming.
Mike Fry is my good friend. He's the head chef. And good spot. Another good thing. I
So many great things about
found
Pittsburgh.
a
There's
great
another-
donut place that's
Yeah.
been there since 1947. I found all these great spots. I'm loving it.
Hey, this was a lot of fun. Hope you'll be back on Hold My Cutter sometime
it.
soon.
Yes, sir.
For now.
I got a lot more stories.
Oh, I know.
Oh, don't worry. You're coming back here. I
will
want to
be
get a
back.
little dap from you.
Check out that next episode, Hold My Cutter with Rick Cerrone. Great stuff.